link. It's just giving permission so I know who you are. Okay, Nina says, have set up a few modules that are working great, need help with proposals. Right, Nina, I wasn't going to do proposals today, but if you've got some specific questions, I can look at those. Because the theme that I was going to do today, just because I had some questions, but what I can do, Nina, if you want help with proposals, I can make that the theme for next week. Okay, so just let me know if there's any big things you want me to cover. I can make it a theme. Today's theme I thought I'd do based on questions I've been getting in the Facebook group from a couple of people is looking at this idea of presenting the client with different options, different packages. So think of it as the bronze, silver, gold. And that's very much one of the key things built into the software, that you can offer the client a different range of choices because it's so powerful. Different people value things differently. You don't know, you have to give them a choice. They will self-select, they will choose. And you will find that more people than you perhaps expect will choose to pay you more money for a higher level, more expensive package when they see the benefits of that. So you must give people choices and options. And so I thought today what I'd do is share with you some of the more advanced features and how you can set things up with your packages just right. And kind of linked to that, we'll look a little bit about as well. I'll talk a little bit about enhancements, the upsell process. So I'll start off, before I dive into the software, I thought what I'd do is just give you a bit of background. For those of you that are completely new, by the way, and don't know who I am, my name is Mark Wickersham. And so just by way of background, you want to give people choices. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. One is at the entry level is this idea of bronze, silver, gold. So you want to, when you're pricing something, whether it's bookkeeping, whether it's payroll, give people different choices. And I often teach, you'll heard me teach the magic of 3, that very often 3 is the best. And the reason for that, just as a quick reminder, is that when you present people with 3 options, like the bronze, silver, gold, what happens is, the psychology is, because we're risk averse, many people gravitate towards the middle one, not the cheapest, the middle one, because the middle one feels the safest. And so what you will find when you set it up right is you should find that most people choose the middle one. And if you set it up right, what you will find is you'll get at least as many people, if not more, choosing the expensive premium than the cheap one. And that's because we know from research in society there are certain people that just always want the best. I'm one of those. I always look to the most expensive first. I sometimes go for the middle one, but I always look at the most expensive first because that's the sort of person I am. And I know the psychology, and it creates an anchor and all of that sort of stuff. But this stuff's so powerful that even when you know about it and teach it even, you still fall for it. I fall for it every time. Okay. I've just got a question from the Facebook group. It's a quick one, I think. Will any of this be applicable for the starter package? Unfortunately, I can't afford the full package monthly just yet. I'm fairly confident. I don't know who you are, so if next time you could just click on that link so I know who you are. But I think everything I'll talk about today, all the features will be just as applicable whether you've got the starter, full, or pro plan. The main things that you're missing out on the starter is you don't have as many pre-built models for you and restrictions on how many clients you can put in the system. But if you're just starting out, that'll be perfect for you. So you want to give people choices, a bronze, silver, gold, and that's a great place to start. But the only problem, the downside to giving 3 options, a bronze, silver, gold, is you only really have those 3 price points. And essentially, the more prices we can offer when we're working with a client one-to-one, face-to-face, and that's the great thing about our profession, we price face-to-face. And so the more different choices and options that we can give people, the more we can get closer and closer to what's called their maximum willingness to pay. And so we end up getting they get the service they want, and we get the best possible price. And so we do that partly by giving them a choice of a more expensive silver and a gold package, but we can go much further than that. We can go further by, before we even reveal the price, we can give them options. And we do that through the questions process. We can give them choices like, would you like weekly bookkeeping or monthly bookkeeping? Would you like to work with me, the senior partner, or my assistant? Would you like things done fast or slow? We can give people choices. And when people choose things like fast or working with a senior partner or weekly more frequently, that's them saying, I value those things more. And so we build into the software and the pricing a higher price. And if the price is too high, it's not a problem because we can then just change the package. Now, I'm not going to go through that process because we look at that most weeks, the questions and how that works. But the other way that we can do things is through what's called enhancements, or more commonly referred to as the upsell. And the upsell is where, and very important, the upsell is where when someone does buy from you, you then give some choices. Like, for example, those ones I said, do you want fast or slow? You can give those choices either before you come up with the price through the questions you ask, or afterwards. When it's done afterwards, once it's done after they've said yes, that's what's called an upsell. An upsell is extremely powerful. When somebody says, yes, I want to buy something, that's not the end of the process, because once somebody says yes to buy, they're in what's often called buying mode. Buying mode means that once someone's buying from you, they've made that decision to buy from you, they are now much more receptive to buying more things. Okay? So when someone says yes to buy from you, don't stop because you're leaving money on the table. You want to offer them something else. It's called the upsell, as I refer to it in the software as an enhancement, because an upsell is something, and someone asked this question in the Facebook group just today or yesterday, an upsell is something that's done at the point of sale. It's usually something related to what they've just bought, and it's usually relatively small in the context of what they've bought. So, for example, if you have just sold bookkeeping and you want to sell payroll, that wouldn't be an upsell. Payroll would be what's called a cross-sell, because payroll could be an equally as big service. You could sell it anytime. It's not directly related to bookkeeping. And the example I gave to somebody, I can give you a couple of examples when you think about upsells. If you think about the shoe industry, you buy some shoes in the shoe shop. When you get to the counter, they will say, to keep your shoes looking this great, would you like to buy this polish? The shoe polish is the upsell. Okay, you've already made the decision to buy the shoes. Now they're going to offer you something else. And the polish is an enhancement because it keeps their shoes looking nicer for longer. It's a relatively small extra expense. People in buying mode very often say yes. Another example I often give is when you buy a brand new car from the showroom, they go and give it a final clean, you go and sort the paperwork out, and when you buy the car, they will then say, to keep your alloy wheels looking this great, would you like to buy alloy wheel protection? And many people say yes, and they make a lot of money from that. That's an upsell. So upsells are very powerful. I'm going to talk a bit more about that as we go through as well with this theme of giving clients choices. Okay, before I do that, let me just see a couple of questions. So Nancy says the recordings won't be blurry. Thought, will they? Just checking. No, Nancy, so we are, because we're streaming this to Facebook and to YouTube Live, and we've tested this, the recordings are perfectly fine. It's a Zoom problem. So if you find you want to catch up with the recording, you'll find them on my YouTube channel, and it will be a great quality recording. I can see in my preview window here, I can see the quality. So Nancy, you should be good. Rajiv, Mark, please provide some roadmap path for brand new users. That's a great question, Rajiv, because somebody said to me just a few weeks back now, they said it would be really good if you could provide a high-level checklist of all the things to go through, just to tick off, to get up and running fast with the software. And I decided that what I will do is build that checklist next week and make that the theme for next Friday's session, Rajiv. So anybody who's brand new, we're kind of diving in today. Next week's session will be really for people who are just getting started and want to get up and running fast. So yes, Rajiv, we will be building a checklist, and I'll be going through that in our first 10-15 minutes of next week to help you get up and running fast. So Jackie says, Mark, I've been wondering if it's possible to add our own drop-down list to a question in a model we're using for a quote. Yes, and I'm going to show you that. Later. I'll do my theme next, and then Jackie, I'll come back to your question. And Rajiv says, every Friday we'll be pricing software Q&A. Yes, this is the third Because of Christmas and New Year, we got back out of the habit, but my plan is to go live. This is the third one in a row that we've done. I have most of my Fridays free at the moment, so I am planning to go live this time every Friday to do a session where there'll be 20 minutes of me talking about the software, and then we'll do Q&A. I'm running a bit behind now, and then we'll do Q&A. So yes, that's the plan, Rajiv. And it may well be, as these sessions evolve, it may be that we move across to not just questions about the software, but me just answering questions to help you with pricing full stop. So yes, my plan is to go live regularly on a Friday. Okay, no more questions. So what I'm going to do is go into the software and show you a few things about software. Just bear me a second. I just will need to just log in again. It shouldn't take me many seconds. That should be it. Let me just hit that button. Yeah, we're there. Okay, so I'm at this is the home screen right now. If you've never seen this before, you can price any service you want. I have a whole bunch of services set up here. Let me just show you very quickly. Very quickly. So if I wanted to price bookkeeping, I would hit use the model, or from the left-hand menu, I can pick the bookkeeping option. If I have a client, I'm in front of the client right now. They want to buy my bookkeeping. I've built up the value of it. Let me just show you who I am. So let me just put me back on the screen. There we go. So I built up the value. The client wants to buy. I might have gone through a brochure. The last thing to decide is the price. So I would go through, I'd ask my scope questions, and Jackie says, can we change the drop-down boxes? Absolutely. I'll show you that later when we get to the Q&A part, Jackie. I'll show you how to change drop-down boxes. Anything in these pre-built models, you can change anything. It's really flexible. So I'll show you that, Jackie, later. So we can ask our scope questions like how many transactions. We can ask our preferences, give them choices like, do you want bill pay? Questions like I said earlier, do you want it done fast or slow? Do you want weekly, as we've got here, do you want weekly, how frequently, weekly bookkeeping, monthly bookkeeping? We can give them these choices, give them options, and then we get to the page where we present them with the three choices. And so ideally in the process, what you really want to do is, before you start the software, you want to tell them about your three options. So you may have a brochure or something where you go through your bronze, silver, gold. Because ideally what you want to do is get the client to tell you which one they want to buy before you reveal the price. And just in case you forget to do that in advance, that's the reason why when you get to this page for the first time, there's no price. There's a button to reveal the price. And the reason for that, it's to do with one of the laws of influence. It's called commitment and consistency. And what that says is that as humans, let me switch back. As humans, we see it as a positive trait, a good thing to be consistent in our actions. When we tell people we're going to do something, we tend to follow through because it seems it's a good trait to be consistent. And there's all sorts of great examples of how powerful that can be. So the reason why you would say to the client before you give them the price, so tell me, George, I've gone through our three different options for bookkeeping. Which do you think is the best one for you? Would it be the premium, the full, or the essential? And if George says, well, do you know what, the premium looks really good, I want the premium one. Because the client articulated that, and because of the law of commitment and consistency, when you then reveal your price for the premium, even if that's really high, George is going to be reluctant to go for one of the cheaper ones because of that law. So that's why you want to ask the client, so which one do you think is right for you? And George might say the premium. Great. So then we reveal the price. And in this case, it's if I click this button, we can see it's 12 payments of 447. And if that's too high, we can change things in the software. As you know, I'm not going to do it today, but you could go back and change the answers to those questions. You could say to George, let's look at the price if it's monthly rather than weekly, or whatever it might well be. So we can change a lot of those questions live with the client and keep working with the client until we get down to a price that they're happy with. Okay, now if George then does say yes to, let's say, the premium, then once we've done that, you've made a sale. Great news. You've made the sale. George is buying from you. I disappeared, didn't I? George is buying from you, but that's not the end of the process, because what we want to then do is offer the upsell. In the software, we call it enhancements, because an upsell is something that enhances what they've bought. It improves it. So I've got some examples in the standard one that you could use. It might be you ask them if they want you to also do their sales tax returns, or if they're a corporate, perhaps prepare their dividend vouchers and statutory paperwork, or it might be they want inventory control, management reporting, or some other reports. So think of this as they've just bought the shoes. Here's where you would offer the shoe polish. They've just bought the car. This is where you offer the paint chip protection warranty. Okay, let's talk about how we set all of that up, because you've got a huge amount of flexibility. I mentioned earlier, if I just go back, I mentioned earlier that by default, I would suggest that you think about the magic of 3. You give 3 choices, a bronze, silver, and a gold. But you don't have to do that. With effective pricing, you can offer anywhere between 1 and 5 different packages or options. Why 1? Because you might have a service where you've racked your brains and just can't think of a bronze, silver, gold. It's a really simple service. It's filling in a form to help them get relief because of COVID. So you might have just 1 thing, and that's fine. Sometimes there's a reason why you might want a 4th, and sometimes even a 5th. So what I'm going to do is hit the cogwheel at the top. The cogwheel is where we go behind the scenes and we can change everything about the software. And the place that you will go most often is model management. Model management is where you set everything up. So if you are new, you won't see all these models if you're brand new. These are the ones I've created. But what you will find at the bottom is, depending on whether you've got the starter plan, the full, or the pro, I've built some models for you to get started, and you can grab those models. So I did exactly that to create my bookkeeping full model. And what I'm going to do now is, because I'm in demo mode and I've got so many demo accounts and it gets confusing, one of the things you can do, once you've got a model that you like, so I've got one here called Bookkeeping Full, I can clone it. What that means is you can take a model and you can replicate it because you want to test it, or you want a slightly different version. So I'm just going to call this one Bookkeeping Test to remind me just to delete it afterwards, because I'm going to mess around with my model now. Okay, I'm going to hit, make sure it's live. I'm going to hit save and continue. So behind the scenes, we can change all those questions, and Jackie, I'll show you later about the drop-down boxes and answer that for you. We can change so many things about the questions, but I'm going to focus today on the packages and the upsell. So if I go to packages, here, this is where you can set your ticks and crosses. And I got a question earlier from, I forget who it was now, but I got a question earlier. Someone asked me the question, what are some of the items in the standard model here, like enhanced credit control? I'll come on to that. I'll explain what some of these things are. This is just, in the models I've built for you, they're just items to for you to start with, okay? So I've created for you in some of the packages a list of what you might put as in your 3 packages. You can change this really, really easy. If you don't want to do an annual business review, just hit the delete, and I've deleted that one. You might decide that you want this dedicated account manager. You want to do that, but you want to give them a dedicated account manager in the middle package as well. So if I edit that, I can change to include that in the full package. And as I do that and click save, and I could change it to someone else, a dedicated client manager. We can just rename it really quickly. So it's a dedicated client manager, and I've now put that as part of the full package as well. You will see in the middle of the screen a tick is now in that middle package as well. So you can create your 3 options. You can add new items, edit, and so on. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. It's really easy to do. But what if you don't want 3? What if you want to build in a 4th super premium bookkeeping option, or a starter bookkeeping option, or you just want to have one package? Well, that's where you go to what's called pricing parameters, which is the step before. Pricing parameters. This is the most complex page in the software, so I'm going to spend a bit of time just walking you through this. This is where you basically set up your menu pricing, your bronze, silver, gold. And you'll see that, firstly, across the top, there's 5 columns, because if you want, you can have 5 packages. How do you determine how many you're going to have in your model? Well, if we go right down to towards the bottom of this screen, you will see something that says display options. Okay, display options is basically saying to the client, to the software, either hide this because I don't want to enable this in this particular pricing model. I don't want a super premium option in my bookkeeping. Or if you do want it, we can hit show. And if I hit show, that will now be available. And if I hit show for super premium and go back to save and continue to here, you will see that I now have 4 columns, and by default it'll just put ticks in all of them. So if I decide that, and with the super premium, the most expensive one, you will want to have something in all the packages. So you might decide, do you know this regular business review meeting and advice, I want to reserve that for the top package. So I'm actually going to take that out of my old top package because I have a new top package now. So I've taken regular business reviews out. It's now part of super premium. Okay, so that's how you create more than one option. We do it from the previous step in the workflow called pricing parameters. And it's at the bottom. It's the option. You can choose whether to show or whether to hide that particular package. You can show up to 5 packages. Just make sure you show at least 1. If they're all hidden, you're not going to have a price. Okay, so you need at least 1 on show, but you can have up to 5. What does reveal mean? What does reveal mean? One of the things that you can do, and this is really powerful, particularly if you're selling something like a consulting service, business advisory. One of the things, if you're part of my training academy, is you'll know that I teach the idea of creating an anchor, revealing the most expensive first, because that creates an anchor price. You reveal the most expensive first, and that's partly why you may have noticed that the most expensive is on the left as you look across the screen of prices. Now, one of the things that you could do is, let's say I've got these 4 options, I could leave that as show, and I could change that to reveal, and to reveal. And what that will do is when I then show the client the prices and the rows of ticks, it will only show them the super premium and the price for that. And then there's a button, kind of a subtle button on that screen where I think it's called TR. TR, it stands for toggle reveal. When you press that button, it will then shunt that along one and pull in the next list of options. And then when you press it again, it'll bring in the third one you want to reveal. And it does it based on the order you've got down here. So if you're showing the super premium, when I hit toggle reveal, it will then show the premium next. Then it'll show the silver next, and then it will show the gold finally. It won't show the other one because it's set to hide. So you get to, this is the line, or these 2 rows here are where you choose how many options you want to have. I suggest if you're new to value pricing, start with 3. But if you want less or more, this is where you choose. And if you want to, you can choose to reveal them one at a time. That's the column of ticks and crosses. You can reveal them one step at a time. And that's very powerful if you're using a process I call top-down pricing. Okay, what else should I cover on this? So you can change the name. In the bookkeeping one, I've got Essential Full Premium. You could change it to Bronze, Silver, Gold if you like. That's not great language, but you can decide what your packages are called. You can also have what's called tooltip text. Means when you're showing the client this for the first time, there'll be a little question mark icon. And if you hover your mouse over the question mark icon, it opens up a little box, a help box. And that's we call the tooltip. Okay, a tooltip is when you see a question mark icon at the front end of the software. And you can here choose the wording that comes up. So if the client says, who's the premium best for? And you hover your mouse over the question mark, it will then pull up and say, this is the best option for ambitious business owners who want to go beyond the data entry and get regular support and advice, interpreting the numbers and making decisions. And so you can have a little pop-up if you want. You don't have to fill these in, it's optional. If you don't fill it in, there's no question mark. But there's certain places in the software where you can pull up in front of the client and tell them something. Okay, let me talk about the next set of 4 rows and explain these. So we can set within the software, you build up the price based upon the questions, which we'll look at another time. We'll go deep on that another time. But you can create as many questions as you want. How many bank transactions do you have? Do you want weekly or monthly bookkeeping? And as you're building up the questions, you decide how the price is calculated. So you're in control, and I've built models for you. But what happens if you do that, and perhaps because the client answers no to a lot of questions, it calculates a low price that's lower than you want to go, or it goes the other way and comes up with an insanely high price that's embarrassing. Well, what you can do is you can set parameters. You can set minimums and maximums that will never go above or below. And you do that now individually for each package. So I've set this up to be, at the moment it's a minimum of 1,200. That's 100 a month. You'll divide by 12 as you'll see in a bit. It won't go any less than 100 a month. And it won't go any more than whatever's the maximum. Okay, so I would recommend the maximum's high, because, okay, you might not want to come up with 1 million, but I would have a high maximum. But it's a great way, I would recommend you put in a minimum, okay, and think about that. The other thing that I would do is, although I've got this set with all the same minimum, you probably want to make sure they're different, because what you don't want is a situation where you've made a mistake with the maths that's actually may come up with a low price because you've multiplied by 0 somewhere. And the software then reinserts the minimum, but it shows, as I've got here, the essential full premium, all at 1,200 or 100 a month. It would look weird if they're all the same price. So what I would do here is, if you want the full to be 30% higher, I would just put in a number that's 30% higher than this 1,200. I can't do the maths off the top of my head, so I'm going to put 1,800. And then I might, on this one, put in 2,500. So even if it comes up with a low number in the calculations, it will, worst case scenario, it'll show 1,200, 1,800, 2,500. Okay, so that's a little tip there. Think about your minimums, think about your maximums. Of more importance, perhaps, these next two rows that say relative price. And there's two, relative price multiplier and relative price add. What the software does is it does the maths based on the questions you ask and comes up with a price. And whatever that price is, you'll usually have that as the price as your bronze or your essential. Doesn't have to be, by the way, you can change it if you want to. And so I have a 1 in this box. In other words, it calculates the price. Let's say the price is $200 a month. We then multiply by 1, it's $200 a month for bronze. But if we want the silver to be 30% higher, then I've got 1.3. So I'll keep the numbers simple, actually. Let's say the price comes up at $10,000 for the year for bronze. What it will do is it'll say, okay, 10,000 for bronze. For the middle one, times 1.3, it'll be 13,000 for the middle option. And I've got 1.5 here, so it'll be 15,000 for the top. So this is basically just a multiplication. It multiplies the final answer to give you the price for each package. So that means that the way I've set it up, you'll always find your full or middle is 30% higher than the entry, and the top one will be 50%. But you can also have an addition as well. And so this might be a situation, let's imagine, for example, that you decide that let's say that in the middle and top packages, you build in a feature, you build in something which could be, let me think of a good example with bookkeeping. I can't, but let's pick a crazy example. Let's decide that you decide to build into your middle and top option a will review with a local lawyer, for argument's sake. I know you wouldn't do it with bookkeeping, but a will review. And let's say that will review, you actually then outsource it to the lawyer to do it. And the lawyer will charge you $500. So you want to make sure that your middle and top package are at least 500 more than the other package. Because the problem with simply just multiplying, if I come up with a price, if I've got 1,200 as my minimum for bronze, and the next one's 1.3 times, 30% higher, and we are at the minimum level, that might not add on enough to cover the $500 you're going to pay the lawyer, plus all the other things you're bundling in as well. So what we can do is we can put in 500 here and 500 here, and the way it'll then work is this. It'll just say, right, here's the calculated price for your main service, your entry-level service. We're then going to multiply by 30%, multiply by 1.3, and add on 500 to cover the cost of that thing that you've bundled in. Okay, so if you bundle things into a more expensive package and it costs you a certain amount of money and you want to make sure that's at least covered, then that's where you might do the relative price add. Okay, I'm not going to cover rounding. That's price psychology. It's an advanced thing. If you understand it, use it. If you don't, it's for another day. Final thing I want to mention on this page is period spread over. So the software always calculates a total price. So it might calculate, it might come up with $12,000 for bookkeeping. It comes up with a total price. You might want to, with certain services, quote it as, let's say, a monthly price. You don't want to tell the client it's 12,000. You want to say it's 1,000 a month. If you want a monthly price, you just put 12s in this row. Okay? If you have a price, if you want to do payroll, for example, and it's a weekly payroll, and you want to show a weekly amount, put 52s in this, and it'll just divide all the numbers by 52 to show the weekly price. If it's quarterly, divide by 3. Okay, and there's some interesting things we can do with this. It allows you to use some price psychology. If you've got a one-off service like for example, setting somebody up on a QuickBooks system, then you could have 3 packages of bronze, silver, gold, but you could let them pay over a longer period, like 3 months, with the top option, which makes it appear a smaller number. It's powerful price psychology. If you're part of my training, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, and the last thing I want to do before going to questions, because I've gone on longer than I expected to, the last thing, so that's how you set up those. If I now move to enhancements, this is where you set up those add-ons. Do you want shoe polish to go with your shoes? Okay, and you saw from the example I gave earlier, I've got sales tax. We could offer to do the sales tax returns, and I've set this up so that it adds on just $897 for the year. Divide that by 12, it adds on for just 75. That works, I think, at $75 a month. So we can add in our optional extras. But here's something that I get asked quite a lot. People say to me, Mark, I have my 3 options, my 3 packages. I have my 3 packages, my bronze, silver, gold. Sometimes I find I have clients that say, look, I can't afford the gold. I'm just the premium, the gold. I'm just starting my business. I can only afford the bronze. But in your gold package of things, you've got this thing that I really, really like. I'd like that as well if that's possible. And so the way that you can do that is in your upsells, you could build in things that are in your more expensive packages. So if you've got, for example, in the most expensive package, you've got a premium report and a client wants the premium report, but they just can't afford the premium service, then we can make the premium report that's in the most expensive package, we can build it in as an upsell. But then you might be saying, yes, but Mark, what if they buy the premium package? You don't want to then offer them that report because they've got it in that particular package. So what you can do is when you can create different sections of upsell. And so I've got 2 sections, one called popular add-ons and one called report and analysis. I could create a section that's called things in the premium option, which is all the things that are just in premium that I'm willing to offer as a standalone thing if they buy a cheaper package. And then what I can do is I need to give it a name. If I uncheck these, it means that if somebody buys the premium or the super premium, it will not offer that set of upsells because they've got it already. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so that's what these ticks are here. It allows you to choose which upsells you offer somebody based on the choice they've made of package. Okay, that's what I wanted to share with you today. So I'm going to deal with questions next. And so let me just check. As far as I can see, there's no questions through the social feeds just yet. No, so nothing there. They're all in Facebook. In fact, I've only got 2 questions at the moment. It isn't a problem because I had another question that somebody asked me earlier. And I will answer that as well from Scott. I don't know if Scott's here or not. But Jackie, I said I'd promise to answer yours. So Jackie says, Mark, I've been wondering if it's possible to add our own drop-down lists to a question in a model we're using for a quote. I'm just checking I've read it properly right. Yes, but you'll need to set it up in advance. We just go back into the software. Okay, so this time we go to questions. And in the questions, when you're setting this up, I've broken this one down. This is bookkeeping, so this is quite a complex model. I have my scope questions. I've called it about your business, as you can see at the top. This is about your business. It's the scope questions. I've got some options. Do you want bill pay services and other things you might want? Like, do you want it done weekly, monthly? So I've got these different sections that I'm just moving them around so you can see what I'm talking about. And so if you want to add your own drop-down box, let's say, now it's going to test me. I think I'm on my feet and ask for a good. Okay, let me say this. I think I've got the question already actually, but I'm going to add it as a new question. I'm going to put it in bill pay services just because I feel like it. What did I just do? Hang on. Sorry. So I'm in bill pay. I'm going to click add question, and I'm going to add the question: who do you want to deal with your bill pay? Big pay? Spell check can be annoying sometimes. There you go. Who do you want to deal with your bill pay? If I put a description here, it'll pull up one of those little tool tips, a little question mark. It's optional whether you fill that in. And then I can choose what sort of question it is. Well, this is a drop-down box question because it's not. You wouldn't have yes or no. Who do you want to deal with the bill pay? Yes or no. It doesn't make sense. It's a drop-down box. Okay. I also need to choose the calculation type. So when they choose something from a drop-down box, Jackie, do I want to set a number that gets added to the price, multiplied, or something else? Most of the time it'll be multiply or add. I'll keep it as a simple addition. No, I'm going to go for multiply. Go and multiply. Now what we can do is we can select a pre-existing drop-down box we have for that model, like number of sales invoices or what industry are they in. Well, obviously I don't want those. I'm going to create my own brand new one. So I create a drop-down box, and what I now am prompted to do is firstly give it a name. So I'm going to give the name Bill Pay Manager. Then I'll know that that's what that list is in case I want to use it in another model or elsewhere. And then we add options. So mine is Mark. So if they want me to be their bill pay manager, and I think this was a multiply, wasn't it? I'm really expensive, so I'm going to multiply the price by 50%. So I'm going to times by 1.5. But they might want to use Sarah. And actually, Sarah is even more valuable than me, so I'm going to double the price if they choose Sarah. But they might want to choose George. So you could put a list of your team members in, for example, and if they go with George, we're actually going to reduce the price by 25%. That's the cheapest option. So what will happen is when you then sit in front of the client, you'll ask that question. Who would you like to manage, if they want bill pay, who would you like to manage your bill pay service? And they say, oh, you, Mark, because we want to work with you. Great. It multiplies the price behind the scenes. If the price, when we reveal it, is too expensive for them and outside their budget, then one of the things we can do is say, well, the reason it's that price is because you want to work with me to deal with your bill pay. But if you can't afford that, George, and I can introduce to George if you want, my clients love George. If you have George as your manager, the price also goes down. Would you like to see what the price would be if it's George? And then you just simply change the answer, show them the new price, which will be lower by quite a bit. As you can see, it goes from a 50% uplift to a 25% drop. So that's got a big difference in price. And they're going to go, phew, that's a much better price. Yes, please, we'll use George. Which means that you've got two wins. You either get a higher price or you get a lower price, but it's freed up your time. You don't have to deal with this client. Okay, I hit save. I've now got that drop-down box, and I can see it on here. Just to remind myself, I can modify it and change it if I want, and I can also set a default. It may be that I want most people to choose Sarah, and that means when the client sees the question, the default answer is Sarah. Okay, so we can set defaults with our questions. I recommend that you do. Hit save. That's it. That's our drop-down box done, Jackie. I hope that answered your question. Just shout if it didn't, but I'm going to mark that off as being answered. Next question is, oh, Kimberly, that's a long question. Let me do Nancy. I'm going to do Nancy, and I've got one other question that came in earlier from Scott Musso. Is that right? Don't worry, Kimberly. Nancy says, I saw in the pricing parameters you had something that said bonus versus free versus green check. What does that mean? Nancy, great question. I just need to find it. So if I go into, I think you're talking about the page where you set up your packages, your bronze, silver, gold. And if I click on edit for any of these, let's say, let's just go with the penultimate one for now. If I click the edit button, you can then decide if something's included. So I've got regular business review meetings and advice included in super. That means if you have super, there'll be a tick. And it means that if it's excluded, there'll be a cross in the premium, full, essential and light. So included, excluded determines whether it's putting a tick or a cross. However, you don't have to have ticks and crosses. You could hit free, and that just puts the word free. Or you could have not applicable, and it puts a dash, which may be appropriate. It may be sometimes that it may be, for example, you have as part of your bookkeeping, a summary report and a premium report. And the summary report is just for the cheap option, and the premium report is for the most expensive too. Well, because they get a premium report in the middle and top option, because they get a premium report, they don't need the summary report. But you wouldn't put crosses either, because that feels like they're missing out on something. So summary report, you could put dashes, not applicable, because they got the next thing down, which is the premium version. And then finally, and this is really powerful, you've got free text. It can't be too long, but you could have in your packages, as well as ticks and crosses, you could have a line item that says, it could be frequency of meetings. And you might decide that for the super, they get a monthly meeting. And it may be that for the premium, they're going to get less frequent, a quarterly meeting. Or quarterly business review meeting, in this case. So if I click on save, we can see they get monthly meetings with the top option down here. Can you see this row here? Monthly, quarterly, and then crosses. So we have a lot of control. It's not just ticks and crosses. We have a lot of control as to how we build up those tables and present them to the client. Now, personally, I would not differentiate my packages based on frequency of meetings. You can do, but I wouldn't, because I would just have, as it's worded here, regular business review meetings, and then have it as a question before that says, how many review meetings would you like? That way, somebody can choose the premium, but have quarterly meetings. Somebody might want to have the middle package, but they really want regular meetings. So it allows someone to have a bit more flexibility because you've taken it out of a package and made it a question icon. So think very carefully when you build your packages to what extent you want to to what extent you have something in a package as standard, or what you will actually make it as an option through the questions or an upsell enhancement afterwards. And by the way, you can see this. Here's a tooltip. It's a little, can you see this eye icon? So when it'll pull up, if I just hit edit here, I wrote this description. I'm going to put tips in there under that little box there. If I click save, a little eye appears and tips will pop up, and that will happen at the front end. So let me deal with Scott's question. I don't know if Scott's here or not. I think I've dealt with Nancy, so I'll just tick that one off. So Scott said earlier, he said, on the standard packages that I've built, he says, I don't know what some of these items are. Could you explain them? So let me pick the ones I think he said. So things like completion of sales tax returns is self-explanatory. But there are a couple that I think some people are not too sure what they are. But bear in mind, these are just my suggestions. So this one here that I build into 3 of the packages says, your holistic cloud financial system. What does that mean? If you've done my training course on how to price bookkeeping, I explain it anyway. But essentially, you can change it, change the wording. But one of the ways that you can add value to people is say, look, I'm doing your bookkeeping, but we are experts in different technologies and apps that you can use to get the best out of your financial system. So, for example, you're on QuickBooks Online. I know you've got a team of people you have to manage. You could integrate Expensify to manage your expenses. You could use T-sheets to replace that old-fashioned clocking in, clocking out system that you've got. So you could give advice on different apps. And so I just called it your holistic cloud financial system, because the heart of a cloud system is Xero or QuickBooks Online, but we have a whole set of other apps that can make the client's life much easier, which the client is probably not aware of. So one of the ways that you can add value is once a year, for example, have a meeting with the client and say, I've been thinking about your business, and I think that you might benefit from having a few extra tools that you can plug into your system. And so I've gone away and thought about that, and these are the 5 that I think will make the biggest difference to you. I think that Expensify will really help you get your expenses. So that's what the holistic cloud financial system is. It's where you, perhaps once a year, it's up to you the frequency, it's up to you, but once a year, say you give them some recommendations. Here's 5 tools I think will be really good for you. A, that adds value to the client, but also the client might say, do you know what, I really like those too. Can you help me set them up? Guess what? There's a cross-sell there. There's an opportunity for you to set them up and charge a fee for that. So things like that are a great thing to build in, because A, it adds value, B, it would lead to a cross-sell opportunity if the client wants you to implement. So that's what I mean by that, okay? What I build into these models are just my suggestions. You can change them. Another question Scott asked was, so Mark, what's enhanced credit control? Well, again, it can be whatever you want it to be, but if I was in practice again now, one of the things I know is that collecting cash is so important for businesses, particularly now in these times of a pandemic and with COVID. And one of the things I also know is that with the technology available today, it's easier to collect cash than ever before, because in tools like Xero and QBO, you can build into the emails that go out with the invoices a button where the customer can pay you. There's various tools and apps. In the UK, we have, for example, Go Cardless for doing direct debits, and you can collect cash from your customers really easily. So one of the ways that, again, you could add value to your client is once a quarter or once a year, you could say, I've been thinking about your business. I see that cash flow is an issue for you. Here's 2 or 3 ways that I think that you might be able to collect your cash quicker using a couple of these tools. Again, it adds value. And to what extent you give that advice depends on your expertise. You might go as far as also enhanced credit control. You might also give them advice on their terms and conditions, on the wording of their statements, anything that helps them collect cash quicker. That's all I'm getting at with that is just to give you an idea of something you could build into your packages to add more value and justify a premium price. Now, Sarah, I don't know if Scott had a third one he was not sure about. He said, what's the difference between regular business review meetings and advice and an annual business review? I don't know. And it's not actually on this particular one, I don't think. But things like it's up to you to decide. I'm not sure which one he's looking at, but I probably would just go with regular and have annual as an option with the frequency in a drop-down box, for example. But it's entirely up to you. If I was doing annual reviews, I would save annual reviews for more like things like talking about the client's goals. How have they done for the last 12 months? Let's look at how you've done. Let's look at the summary numbers and let's see, have you been on track? Have you hit your goals? How can we help you get to where you want to be 12 months from now? To me, that would be an annual meeting type thing, whereas a more regular business review might be, let's look at the results for this month, see how things are going, and just looking at some of the numbers on a month-to-month basis. Okay, how are we doing for time? We've got 7 minutes, and as far as I can see, there's no questions from the Facebook group or YouTube, but it'd be interesting to know if you're actually there still listening. So let me know if you have got a question. The Q&A box, I've got quite a long one from Kimberly, so just bear with me a second while I just read this. Kimberly says, any thoughts on the setup to, let me just go back to here. Any thoughts on the setup to accommodate an increase, a basic product price for a client that needs that product, but it's more complicated than an average client. For example, sales tax. A client whose sales tax may take 3 times the normal time, effort, and expertise to complete it because multiple softwares must be accessed to extract the information. There's more complicated calculation, multiple states of reporting, US, etc. Okay, long question. I think I can simplify that. Let me just go through the first sentence again. Any thoughts on the setup to accommodate an increase of basic product price for a client that needs the product, but it's more complicated? Okay, I think what's being said here, if I understand, is that when you are building your packages, so I think I have in this package somewhere, yeah, there's a line item here that says completion of sales tax returns. And I think the question that Kimberly's saying is, because I've bundled that in, what happens if it's really complicated? It might end up costing me a lot more money. And so certainly one of the things that you could do is on this previous page, you could think more carefully about, do you remember this idea of adding on an ad as well as a multiplier? You could do that, but that doesn't really solve, I think, the problem that Kimberly's talking about, because every client's different with sales tax. So if you find that something like sales tax, the scope of work can vary significantly, I would therefore not build into a standard package. Okay, anything in your standard packages, you want to have things where the scope is fairly predictable, where you're in control, like producing a report. Enhanced credit control might be an hour of research, an hour meeting with the client. And so make sure the things that you bundle in are things that you've got some control over, that are fairly predictable, or you could do it by asking questions. So actually, this is the other way you could do it. You could just do it by questions. So you could ask some questions about the sales tax return. So what you might do is say, you might say, all my packages have sales tax returns, that we complete the sales tax return. But it might be based on a number of different factors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a section, like I had bill pay, about sales tax. Okay, so I've got a section called sales tax. By default, it will put it at the end. I can reorder my questions. The order of the questions determines the order of the calculations. I'm going to add a question, and I'm going to say, how complex is your sales tax? You would ask better questions than that, scope questions. I'm a bit rusty on sales tax. How complex is your sales tax? And then you could just simply have a drop-down box that what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an amount on. And what I'm going to do is then create a box that just simply says, so this is sales tax difficulty, and I'm going to just have something like rock hard, in which case I'm going to add on for the year. So we're going to do it, if it's quarterly, you want, let's say 500, you want 2,000 for the year, and perhaps simple, in which case we'll just add on an extra 200, whatever you want, okay? Save that. So that's another way that you could do it. So I would do it through questions, Kimberly. Use questions, create a brand new section of questions. Now that's only one question. You might build some more questions in there. It's entirely up to you. I hope, Kimberly, that's helped with that question. We've got 3 minutes left. I have a sneaky feeling that we might be bang on time, because I think the last question is Jackie, as far as I can see. Let me just check. Nothing come through on the social channels yet. Jackie says, in Canada we have GST returns. This might be a similar question, that must be completed for all clients I work with. Most are quarterly, one is annual. This is not really an option, but essential service for all. Would you still include it as not extra option to be sure I'm getting compensated for the value that this provides them? So I think, Jackie, I might have answered that one in the answer to Kimberly. If it's an essential option, then you can build it into your bronze, your silver, your gold with that line item of ticks. We do your sales tax or your GST in Canada, and then you just go to here and have a section where you just ask some questions about the sales tax to make sure that you've got the scope built in and add the appropriate price on. Did that answer your question, Jackie? And if we did, yes, perfect. Okay, so we have 2 minutes. So I'm going to wrap up with one final tip. One final tip, so I think that's the questions done. Final tip while we are on the questions. So I said to you that, so you can build whatever questions you want. And usually, just to keep things simple, your questions will either add to the price or they'll multiply. And the order of the calculations is determined by the order of the questions. So if, for example, this about sales tax, I added on 2,000 or 200, that was nice and simple. What if, though, depending on whether it's rock hard or simple, I wanted to multiply the price? Okay, I could multiply it by, I could double it if it's rock hard and do times by 2. Bear in mind, what it times us by, what it multiplies by 2, is the running total of the price right up until the penultimate question in this case, because this is the last question. So whatever calculation we've got up until the question before, we would multiply by 2. And that's fine. But you might not want that. And the way I describe it in simple terms, imagine you have imagine you have 2 plus 2 times 2. How does that work out? What's the maths of 2 plus 2 times 2? Well, it's 2 plus 2 is 4 times 2 is we multiply the 4 by 2. We have 8. We have 8 is the answer. 2 plus 2 times 2 is 8. But what if we want to have 2 plus 2 lots of the 2 times 2? Then what we do in a formula, if you're in Excel, the second 2 bits you'd put in parentheses. So you'd have 2 plus open parenthesis, 2 times 2, close parenthesis. And what happens is the math is done in the parentheses first. We have 2 times 2 is 4, and then we add on the 2 before that, and we've got 6. Okay, so the answer is 8 or 6, depending upon the parenthesis. So let's say, for example, that I've just done this sales tax question. It added on 200 or 2,000. I want a second sales tax question where it may or it may not double the price. But I only want to double the price of the sales tax return, which I've currently set, if you remember from this drop-down box, I set it as one option it adds on 2,000, one option adds on 200. And what I want to do is I have a second question that may or may not, it's a yes or no question, that may double the price. I don't want to double the whole price that's been calculated, just the price of the answer to this question, the 2,000 or the 200. Well, we put parentheses around there. And the way that we do that in the formula, in the software, is this isolate here. When you tick isolate into as one of the sections, what the software does, just like parentheses, it'll do the math for all the questions in that section. I only have one now, but if you had a second question, it will do the maths for that in isolation, hence isolate, and then add it to where you've got to so far in the calculations. So if you want to ask questions about other services that have their own separate scope factors, like sales tax returns as part of your bookkeeping, you can ask some other complicated sales tax questions with some multiplications and then isolate the section to do that calculation without the multiplications affecting everything else to do with bookkeeping. I hope that makes sense. I do have a video on it that explains it a bit better than that if you need to revisit it. Okay, that's the end of the questions. Thank you so much for coming along. If you're on Facebook, I'd love it if you've enjoyed this, just give me the thumbs up so I know. If you're on YouTube, same thing, just so I know if you've enjoyed it. We will have another session, same time next week. And the theme for next week will be a beginner's one. So as was it Rajiv, I think, said, how do we get started fast with the software? So if you're new, next week is definitely for you, because I'm going to take you through a brand new checklist to help you get up and running with the software set up in the fastest possible way. And then, of course, I'll answer your questions, whatever questions they may well be. So that's next Friday. Have an awesome weekend, and I will see you all soon. Goodbye for now.